American aerial bombs are now on Ukrainian fighter jets. What our engineers have been working on for more than 2 years has finally come to fruition. The Ukrainian Air Force has gained the ability to use another crucial type of Western weaponry, guided aerial bombs.
These very bombs, the GBU-39 aerial bombs, were developed as bombs for conducting so-called urban warfare.
As a result, the capabilities of our fighter jets have significantly expanded today. What are the Ukrainian MiGs and Sus capable of now? What targets of the Russians will our pilots be able to destroy? And what is the main advantage of the American GBU-39 aerial bomb? This is what we'll discuss today in Arsenal. The main advantage that the modernization of domestic fighters gives to our Air Force, analysts say, is that we will finally be able to fully utilize significant Western military aid.
The increase in the number of carriers leads to an increase in the number of targets that can be hit on one hand. On the other hand, the MiG-29 itself is quite a maneuverable aircraft and is smaller in size compared to the Su-27, making it harder to detect. Exactly. And it can sneak up or fly closer to the targets that need to be hit.
So why was it mainly decided to modernize the MiG specifically for American missiles? The answer is simple. The main goal of the process was not to create a singular superweapon, but simply to work with what we have the most of.
And to expand on the MiG-29 lineup, of which Ukraine had more even before the war. Moreover, such aircraft were additionally transferred to Ukraine. Thus, the adaptation for use with the MiG-29 effectively expands the potential, not only for using these aerial bombs themselves, but also provides more flexible options for launching them at ground targets.
Moreover, the work was not started from scratch. The GBU-39 has already become the fourth type of aviation munition integrated into Soviet aircraft models. Previously, this was done with HARM missiles, guided bombs JDM and Hammer, not to mention the notorious Storm Shadow and Scalp. The principle of modernization remained the same. The onboard systems of Western aircraft are brought out into a separate unit in the cockpit of the military aircraft, where the pilot can control the munition one after launch using additional equipment.
These are bombs of Western production. They use the same munition control system as, for example, the AMRAAM missiles, Abyss, that were previously transferred to Ukraine, and their adaptation precisely consisted in the fact that it was practically impossible to fully adapt such munitions to a Soviet platform, so an emulator was created that effectively replicates the commands and control system of the same F-16 using a tablet.
And now about the bomb itself. The history of the GBU-39 began back in the late 90s when the Pentagon first considered the need for small-sized precision bombs. In the early 2000s, Boeing started developing the project, and by 2006, the American Army had already received the first prototypes of the new bombs.
It has significantly less power than a regular aerial bomb, but its main feature is the ability to accurately hit specific targets.
And this is exactly what Ukraine needs today. In the conditions of war, in urban areas, considering the Russian tactic of positioning equipment behind houses, schools, and even on the grounds of a nuclear power plant, the best solution would be the precise destruction of targets without damaging surrounding objects.
This is, so to speak, a scalpel capable of destroying precise, very expensive targets. For example, these could be hangars with airplanes for the destruction of a specific aircraft. It could be a command center or a flight control point, which can be almost completely destroyed by a single aerial bomb. These could also include, for instance, air defense missile systems. It could be an electronic warfare system, radio electronic intelligence.
At the same time, considering the task set for the use of the GBU-39, the main priority remains accuracy, which is undoubtedly top-notch for these aerial bombs.
The accuracy of impact is generally sharp at around 1 to 8 meters. If we talk about more modern modifications, Of second generation bombs, the accuracy is about 1 meter. If we talk about older modifications, the accuracy is generally within the range of 5 to 8 meters.
To be fair, it should be noted that their accuracy can suffer in areas where enemy electronic warfare is applied. The GPS system used for target guidance does not always function correctly under interference conditions. However, the General Staff has already developed both tactical solutions, and created separate types of GBU-39 bombs for this purpose.
The second generation of the bomb is more modern. Let's say, in addition to existing GPS systems, it also uses the highly advanced infrared active radar self-guidance, which allows it to overcome areas with interference and maintain high accuracy.
The incredibly destructive power of these bombs is impressive and remarkable despite their size. Firstly, due to the special warhead.
In addition to containing about 100 kilograms of explosive, it uses a highly effective explosive that is much more powerful in its equivalent than a regular torpedo or other types of ammunition.
Secondly, the method of deployment and flight trajectory maximize the combat power of what seems to be a small munition.
The bomb itself essentially flies in an aircraft-like manner, and when approaching the target, it uses a so-called ballistic trajectory, striking the target from above. Thus, it achieves maximum penetrating power. And this bomb, due to this approach to impact, is capable of penetrating up to 90 centimeters of reinforced concrete.
Moreover, it should be noted that enemy air defense systems are powerless against these bombs. The flight speed and final approach trajectory to the target guarantee almost 100% destruction.
Their range of impact is about 110 kilometers from the moment of launch. This is a flight at supersonic speed, approximately 2 Mach, which makes these munitions on one hand quite fast. The second important component is their small size and the presence of wings, which on one hand give them a greater flight range, while also making them quite difficult to detect. And just before the strike, they fly at a relatively low altitude, around up to 2,000 meters, which makes intercepting such munitions almost impossible.
And finally, it is worth noting another undeniable advantage of the GBU-39. Due to the cost of this bomb and its quantity in NATO warehouses, it is obvious that the supplies will be quite numerous.
The reduction of necessary additional various control elements actually makes it cheaper than the classic so-called unguided bombs. The cost of one such bomb is about $70,000, which in terms of aviation munitions is very, very budget-friendly.
According to analysts, the use of the GBU-39 in the Kharkiv direction allowed us to employ our fighters as flying artillery, effectively destroying the enemy and halting the advance of the occupiers in just a few weeks. Now, especially after the lifting of restrictions on strikes against Russia, having these bombs in sufficient quantity could become a crucial factor for the success of the armed forces of Ukraine on other fronts as well.
If we are talking about the transfer of several thousand such munitions, and at least their constant replenishment, including the removal of any restrictions on their use against any targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, then we will see that these munitions can be very, very effective. They can destroy key nodal military infrastructure objects. These are communication points, coordination points, command centers, effectively not destroying entire buildings, but so to speak, eliminating the command personnel of the Russian Federation.
Did you like the video? Then be sure to definitely give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Watch even more interesting facts about weapons and modern technologies on the front in the upcoming episodes of Arsenal.
This aircraft was used by legends, the Ghost of Kiev and most Ukrainian pilots. With the help of this aircraft, dozens and hundreds of enemy air targets have been destroyed. The MiG-29 held back the Russian onslaught at the beginning of the full-scale invasion and continues to help. And Ukrainian pilots, for their part, have proven that the age of the equipment doesn't matter when the aircraft is in skilled hands.
It was indeed quite delightful to hear that you absolutely fly out on a mission and then they send you a video where you destroyed an enemy air defense system. It's a very pleasant feeling. It's one of the best feelings you can have during the war.
But what kind of fighter is this? What upgrades has it received from Ukrainian developers? And how have Western allies breathed new life into the MiG-29? We'll tell you all about this and more in just a moment. The MiG-29 is a development of the Soviet Union. Its history began when the USA acquired brand new fighters and the USSR decided, of course, to join the arms race. The task was to create a heavy aircraft which eventually became the Su-27, as well as a light one. The MiG-29 was the result of work on the latter. The work on creating the MiG began in the late 1960s, and by the 1980s, the aircraft became the main multi-role fighter of the Warsaw Pact of the USSR. And even now, despite its age, many countries still have the MiG-29 in service. But to be honest, it's more out of necessity than great affection.
There is no possibility to replace it. Most countries would gladly replace it, like Serbia is doing now, right? They just continue to effectively operate it, but it's considered not very effective, and therefore that is why they purchased the French fighter Rafale.
After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine received 245 MiG-29 units. However, not all of them have survived to the present day, not to mention that many were faulty and could only be used for spare parts. And in 2014, the Russians occupied the Crimean Peninsula and the MiGs. Ukraine had even fewer. As of the start of the full-scale war, Kyiv had 43 combat aircraft and 8 training combat ones.
Most of them were upgraded to the level of MiG-29. This is the first stage of Ukrainian modernization. Well, it's quite sufficient. The modernization there, separate, included the radar, radio communication, the equipment. A system was installed, GPS, satellite navigation. No increase. In engine thrust occurred, the same engines remained. No, none. The armament composition remained absolutely unchanged. Therefore, the modernization only concerned the aircraft's equipment.
This modernization is also already aged. The improvements were developed in 2009. There was another attempt to modernize the MiG-29. They planned to upgrade the MiG-29 Mu-1, which was supposed to become the MiG-29 Mu-2. But in reality, improvements were only achieved during the full-scale war and with the help of allies. However, it's important to note that the main characteristics, such as the combat radius of 700 km, flight range of just over 1400 km, and with external tanks 2100 km, and a practical ceiling of 18 km, remained from the basic version.
The Mu-2 modification attack was also limited in nature and mainly concerned the equipment. What could have possibly been there as potentially maybe such a serious enhancement of combat capabilities, the ability to use bombs using the GPS system, guided bombs that would fall precisely and accurately according to coordinates.
To be honest, the MiG-29 is indeed an outdated fighter. Even Ukrainian pilots themselves say this. But there is one nuance. Western allies have managed to extend their lifespan.
The aircraft is somewhat outdated, and we cannot effectively counter modern enemy planes. We lack the current range and missile power to destroy. And the targeting system is quite old already. But thanks to advanced Western weaponry, this aircraft has undergone comprehensive modernization, and because of this, we can effectively use a variety of aerial munitions.
And we really do have something to shoot at the occupiers with.
We are currently using French guided bombs from the MiG-29s, Hammer, which hit targets precisely by coordinates using GPS and satellite connections. And the same goes for the American JDAM and JDAM missiles of regular range and extended range.
Besides targeting enemy objects, the MiG's tasks also include intercepting missiles and drones, and it handles this successfully. However, it should be noted that the MiG-29 cannot shoot down all aerial targets.
They are not interceptor aircraft fighters. They cannot intercept in any possible scenario. Ballistic missiles. They can intercept cruise missiles, which are typical and common aerodynamic targets, such as, that is, they fly like a regular target, specifically subsonic. They can intercept, but this is not a stop. Intercept drones like Shahed. They can do this, but not ballistic missiles.
Moreover, the MiG-29, when piloted by Ukrainian pilots, can achieve the truly impossible. For example, shooting down a Russian Su-35 fighter jet. This has happened at least twice. To put it in perspective, the MiG-29 is a 4th-generation aircraft, whereas the Su-35 is a 4++ generation. Yes, and it is several decades newer. The first flight of the Su-35 was in 2008, and it only began to be operated in 2014. But does that really matter when there's a true ace at the controls? From all of the above, one can conclude that the MiG-29 should have long been retired. But what is truly impressive in this whole story is the skill of the Ukrainian pilots. They can do the impossible with old equipment, but also quickly learn to pilot the F-16, and in the future, the Gripens. The latter would greatly help Kyiv in defending our skies. Therefore, we hope that soon Griffins will also be in Ukraine. And when that happens, we will definitely tell you about it. In the meantime, like this video and write in the comments about which other weapons you would like to hear about. Also, subscribe to our new Arsenal channel. The link will be in the info under the video.